Hello and welcome to our channel. Today, we are going to talk about one of the most significant events in the history of South Asia, the partition of India in 1947. Did you know that the partition of India, which resulted in one of the largest forced migrations in human history and the deaths of almost 1 million people, might never have happened as its biggest champion was ill and dying of tuberculosis at the time? Partition might have been averted had people known of this secret. It was also not the first time that the British solution to a problem was to divide the country along religious lines. India had been under British rule for almost 200 years, and by the early 20th century, the demand for independence had reached a peak. However, the spectre of India's partition was always in the background. The first rumblings of trouble came from the partition of Bengal. This was a controversial administrative reorganization of the Bengal province of British India in 1905. The proposal was put forward by the then Viceroy of India, Lord Curzon, and it was intended to improve the efficiency of British administration in the region. However, it was also motivated by political and economic considerations, and it had significant long-term social and cultural implications, as we will see. Under the partition of Bengal, the province of Bengal was divided into two separate administrative entities, Eastern Bengal and Assam, with its capital at Dhaka, and the rest of Bengal, with its capital at Kolkata. The British deliberately divided the province along religious lines. They made the new province of Eastern Bengal and Assam predominantly Muslim, while the province of Bengal was predominantly Hindu. The partition of Bengal was met with widespread opposition from both Hindu and Muslim communities, who saw it as an attempt to weaken their political and cultural influence in the region. It was also seen as a way for the British to maintain their control over the region by dividing the population along religious lines. Following a call by the Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore, many Hindus and Muslims in Bengal tied Rakhi threads, as a symbol of unity, to protest against the partition of Bengal. The opposition to the partition eventually forced the British government to reverse the decision in 1911, and Bengal was reunited as a single province. However, some damage had already been done as it contributed to the growing sense of communal tension and division between Hindus and Muslims, which would eventually lead to the partition of India itself in 1947. The British policy of divide and rule in India was a strategy used by the British colonial government to maintain their control and power in India by dividing the Indian population along religious, ethnic, and linguistic lines. The British believed that by playing different communities against each other, they could prevent a united Indian resistance against their rule. The Indian National Congress, INC, was founded as a political party in 1885 by a group of Indian intellectuals and politicians seeking a more active role in the governance of their country. At the time, INC's primary goal was to secure greater autonomy and representation for Indians within the British Raj. Under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi, the INC began advocating for non-violent resistance to British rule and greater Indian self-determination. In 1916, some prominent Muslim members of the Indian National Congress felt that the interests of the Muslim community were not being adequately represented by the Congress, and that they needed a separate political party. This led to the creation of the All India Muslim League. With Muhammad Ali Jinnah at its helm, the party became the primary force behind the demand for a separate Muslim state in India. Jinnah suffered from tuberculosis since the 1930s, and only his sister and a few others close to him were aware of his condition. Jinnah believed public knowledge of his lung ailments would hurt him politically. So, would partition have happened had Jinnah died earlier and not been present to champion the demand for Pakistan? Jinnah played a crucial role in advocating for the creation of a separate Muslim state and in negotiating with the British and Indian leaders to achieve this goal. Without his leadership and advocacy, it is possible that the demand for Pakistan may not have gained the same level of momentum and support within the Muslim community. Many years later, Lord Mountbatten, the last Viceroy of India, stated that if he had known Jinnah was so physically ill, he would have stalled negotiations, hoping Jinnah's death would avert partition. However, Jinnah's secret was never to see the light of day. In March 1947, Lord Mountbatten was appointed to oversee the transfer of power. He proposed a plan for the partition of India based on religious lines. The plan was announced on June 3, 1947, in a statement by Lord Mountbatten, and was to take effect on August 15, 1947. Cyril Radcliffe, a British lawyer, who had never been to India and was ignorant of the situation, was sent to decide the fate of millions of people by demarcating the boundary between India and Pakistan in a span of only 5 weeks. When the plan for the partition of India was announced, it led to widespread communal violence between Hindus and Muslims. Millions of people were displaced, and there was mass migration as Hindus and Sikhs fled from what would become Pakistan, and Muslims fled from what would become India. The exact number of people killed during this time is unknown, but estimates range from several 100,000 to over 1 million. In addition to the loss of life, many people were left homeless, without food and necessities. It was one of the largest migrations in human history, and it resulted in the displacement of around 14 million people. Many historians and scholars believe that the British government's decision to announce the partition of India without a clear plan for the protection and movement of the population was a major factor in the violence and displacement that occurred during the partition. On August 14 and 15, 1947, Pakistan and India both gained independence from British rule, and the country was divided into two. Pakistan had two parts, East and West Pakistan, that were not physically connected and were on opposite sides of the subcontinent. East Pakistan would eventually seek independence from Pakistan, and with India's military assistance would become Bangladesh in 1972. At the time of independence, India had 565 semi-autonomous princely states that covered 40% of the area of pre-independence India, and constituted 23% of its population. These princely states were not ruled directly by the British and in most cases had an Indian ruler. One of the largest of these was Jammu and Kashmir. The state chose to remain independent after the partition, but in October 1947, tribal invaders from Pakistan attacked, forcing the Hindu Maharaja Hari Singh to request India's military assistance and eventually accede to becoming a part of India. This led to the First War between India and Pakistan, which ended in 1949, with the territory being divided between India and Pakistan. The state has been a source of tension between the two countries ever since. As the two new nations celebrated, Mahatma Gandhi, who had been at the forefront of the freedom movement, chose to stay away. He was deeply saddened by the partition and the violence that had accompanied it. He spent his time trying to bring peace between Hindus and Muslims and promoting communal harmony. On January 30, 1948, he would lose his life to an assassin's bullets. Almost 1 million people silently lined his funeral route, as his body draped in the Indian flag was taken to what is now Raj Ghat. In conclusion, the partition of India was a tragic event that scarred the country's history. It was marked by violence and communal riots, and millions of people were killed or displaced. Since independence, India and Pakistan have fought 3 major wars, and the people of the subcontinent continue to live with the consequences of those fateful months in 1947. Thank you for watching, and we hope you found this video informative. Please like and subscribe to our channel for more such videos.